Today we're going to talk about the concept of pivoting versus punishing. So this is a concept that I talk about in my book, The Treehouse Principle, and I want to relate it back to some of my stories and where I have come from and how I developed this mindset around pivoting when things are difficult in our bodies and in our mindsets from day to day. And this is especially when we're recovering from trauma, any sort of crisis. So this could be your health crisis, this could be grief from loss, this could be a moving crisis, anything that puts you into a state of survival. That is what we're going to talk about today. And so basically the concept of the pivoting versus punishing has a lot to do with how our bodies are designed and wired to protect us. We are wired for safety, first and foremost. So beyond expansion, beyond creativity, beyond fun and play and all of those things, we are first and foremost wired for safety. So one of the things I want to talk about is this getting curious. So what if your body isn't punishing you? It's just simply designed to do what it's doing. And then when we look at the anxiety, the inflammation even that can happen, the exhaustion, even during crisis, that's basically your body showing up to say, alarm bells, something needs to be looked at here. We need attention here in this space. And I think for years, especially us Gen Xers, we were conditioned to push back, to push through, to avoid, to sweep it under the 70s swag carpet and keep going on. And that's where we have done ourselves a disservice, because trauma stays within the body if we don't release it. So it will show up in different forms in the body. Often that can show up as exhaustion, it can show up as anxiety, and it can show up in emotions that just simply come to the surface in the middle of nowhere. So the importance of recognizing these times and these spaces is key to your crisis to creation activation phase. Let's talk about the survival misinterpretation. So I have some notes here that I'm going to go through. And I had some questions. So this is actually a program that I have called the Crisis to Creation Collective. It's more of a group, private community where people come in and can go through these various sessions with me in more of a private, safe space. A couple of these sessions I wanted to bring to the surface. I wanted to bring out to not gatekeep this knowledge and this information, because I think it's so key to it's really, really key to our healing phase, is to be able to have access to this type of knowledge. Some of the knowledge that we don't even have access to. And yes, 100% would recommend therapy. There are various therapists out there and psychologists that can help you and meet you where you're at. Now, some of them, for myself, in my own journey, and I will speak to this a little bit, for those of you that don't know, I'm a two-time cancer journeyer. And so all of the therapists that I went to see, none of them had that experience. So it's very challenging for someone to meet you where you're at when they have not experienced that situation themselves. And so that's kind of where I bridged into this work in this coaching space, is because yes, I'd love to continue to foster a community of individuals that feel safe to come to me when they're going through that health crisis, but I've opened it up and expanded it to ensure that individuals, at no matter what you're going through, any sort of crisis, we can tap into that. But the key point is that it's really important to go to the source. So if somebody is specialized in specific areas such as grief counseling, that sort of thing, then those are the individuals that I would recommend you going to see. But let's talk about how we go into this fight, freeze, flight mode when we're in crisis. And again, that's simply our bodies are wired for survival, so they're engineered to do that. That's exactly what they will do. And it's just their protection mode. That's all they're trying to do. They're not trying to punish us. So when that happens in our body, we often store that emotion, and it's basically sitting there below the surface, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be revealed. So we'll talk about my 3R framework, the reveal, release, redefine. So they're waiting to be revealed, waiting to be acknowledged. And then, only then, once you've revealed them, can you release them. Very important to walk through that. And so I think, again, as I'll say, a lot of the older generations have not been taught how to acknowledge and reveal those emotions and that trauma that we've gone through. So this could be anything, even burnout. Even when you've overworked and you've sort of suppressed things for years, like we're also conditioned to do that, that's 100% another avenue for support that I offer. So the stories can quickly become, why me? What did I do wrong? My body must have betrayed me. It's very important to be careful and aware of those narratives because they can keep us stuck in survival. So it's the moment where we interpret pain as the punishment that we stay stuck in it. So when we can look at it and sort of reframe that narrative to say, wait a minute, maybe this is actually a protection. Our body's designed to, as I said, keep us safe and keep us protected. And then we can look at it as more of a pivot moment where we then have control back into our narratives and what we do, how we show up better in our bodies. So then I do talk a lot about the concept of contrast and how we will experience contrast and in life to show us things that we don't want and then to show us the things that we do want. So it gives us that, that sort of bird's eye view of where we are in life and what we want to experience instead of the things that we are experiencing. And I like to talk a lot about the importance of understanding that contrast is not a punishment and that it actually can be like a doorway. It's somewhere where we start to get curious. We start to show up a little bit differently in our bodies and our mindsets, and we start to become a lot more curious as opposed to the anger and the frustration and the depression and the sadness over what has happened and how it's changed us. I hear this also a lot, and I know I went through it myself. We often don't know how to welcome the new normal in, and sometimes that new normal feels very foreign, so therefore it also doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel familiar. And so how do we get curious about what that new normal looks like, and how can we learn how to accept that new normal? So this is what I started to look into talking about, is the pivot versus punish. So I'll relate it to something, saying like activities in your day-to-day life. So whether that be exercise or just even social activities, social outings, activities outdoors. Often we can be very limited after a health crisis, and even I would say even any other crisis that can limit our mobility and can also show up differently in our body. One of the things that I speak to a lot about is this concept of observing what's coming up in that day. So in your morning, if you're feeling extra tired or extra pain, it's really important to lean in and listen. What does my body need from me today instead? So maybe instead of getting those weights, or maybe instead of going for a half marathon run, we learn how to listen and lean in. And why we do that is so that our bodies can heal more organically, and then they are capable of reclaiming that energy that has been depleted because we didn't listen in the past. So the quicker that we begin to bring this concept into our day-to-day, then honestly, the quicker that we have the ability to heal our bodies, because we're allowing it to rest, or we're doing something different. So perhaps instead of strength training, we do a yoga movement. We do something that's a lot more mindful in our bodies. And maybe we go for a walk in nature. Maybe we just simply sit outside and spend a little bit of time in the sunshine. So it's extremely important to look at this new normal as maybe it's not something what we're trying to get back to who we are, but we're trying to figure out how to create differently from where we now are. And that takes time. It takes time. It's about revealing the narratives, then releasing them, and then redefining what you want your normal to look like going forward. And maybe it's not going to be the same. So there is a grieving process, and I do understand that as well. There's a grieving process of the individual you once were. So there needs to be that acceptance place that you come to, but also, again, it's the acknowledging that that's sad and that's unfortunate and that's frustrating. And you can get angry and you can get mad and sad and all of those kinds of things, because you have to release these emotions. Extremely, extremely important. So I'm just going to take a quick little second here to look at some of the notes I've had here from this session. So one of the questions was, how do I even exercise when my anxiety and or depression is making you want to avoid it? And so one of the things that I would say is that, again, this is where we lean in and listen to our bodies and what does it need from us today. So there's going to be those days that you literally cannot show up in anything other than rest. And it's important to learn how to be okay with that, because I know a lot of us will struggle with that. I know I did. I very much struggled with not understanding why I couldn't do the things that I used to do all the time, how I wasn't able to do certain activities any longer. So how we then pivot is when we allow for those days, then the next day, perhaps, we have a lot more energy. So test it out, test the waters. Maybe we go on the bike for a little bit. Maybe we decide to go for a walk. The important thing is to not punish ourselves for not being there or getting there, because that's where we can get, we can stay stuck in the narratives, and that's where it can become very dangerous for us. So some of the other things we'll talk about is what does it look like if something hurts within our body? Maybe we can start asking the questions like, am I interpreting this as punishment? Do I feel punished? And I can tell you, there have been days, when I'd gone out, we just went out for a snowmobiling day on the weekend, over the weekend. And the next day, I was in excruciating pain. I have scar tissue from all of my surgeries. It's possible that that would happen. I just didn't expect it to the level that it came in. And so I wasn't even able to do yoga that night. That was something that I recognized, that my body was just screaming for me to sit down and shut up. So I literally had to do that because it was not allowing me to do anything other than rest that day. And then sure enough, the next day was much better. I was still a little sore, but because I didn't push through and I didn't punish my body for just not being what it used to be, my body was able to literally heal itself and restore some of those muscle tissues and fibers and whatever else was going on inside my body. So it's about the importance of looking at that, because where also are we holding energy or emotions that could cause some additional pain? So if we're getting angry about experiencing that, it's possible our bodies will hold on to that, because they do hold on to emotions and trauma. And so it could manifest in a very aggressive way to basically get our attention. And that's where it's like, you've got to listen at that point and then make that decision for yourself. Pour yourself a cup of tea, make yourself some soup, whatever it is that you can gently do to align with your body to help it while it heals and recovers is so beautiful, and it is so powerful. One of the things that we also talk about is The reasons why we'll stay in survival, we'll stay in crisis mode, as I call it, is, again, we won't allow for these narratives to come forward. And so we actually will shrink our creativity. Our imagination just shuts down. And play, forget it. Like, that's just not even a question. We do not feel like doing any of those things. This is why people will start to step back and often isolate themselves when they have gone through a crisis. It happens all the time. That's literally why I wrote about that in the Treehouse Principle, about the concept of going into our treehouse and isolating and shutting the door and putting the no girls, no boys allowed sign on, because we are in a state of survival. And so we literally shut down. And I've talked about this in another session, the nervous system safe mode, how our system will literally shut down and only operate the essential functions like breathing and our heartbeat. So because those are the essential functions. When we feel safe, and therefore also when we feel safe in our bodies, that's where the parasympathetic mode will activate and curiosity will start to return and creation starts to become more possible. Some of the other things I like to talk about is understanding that protection is not punishment, that survival mode is just love in disguise. It's your body saying, okay, you need to stay here for a little bit while you heal. And these are kind of the things that I want to tap into, is understanding why these things happen and how we can unpack that. Because the sooner that we recognize that these are things that our bodies are designed to do, the sooner we can become almost like friends with it and sort of be able to sit down with that person, that self, and say, today it's okay to rest. Today it's okay to not get up before 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning because I need this rest. So what are you going to do for yourself from each day to promote that space, to promote that healing, to give yourself permission to pivot versus punish? Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and we'll see you in the next one.